Warning: the following video does not contain any violence, explicit language, or hate speech. This documentary is based on real-life historic events based on research. Everything in this video is public information with the intent of educating and entertaining the viewer. That follows all YouTube community guidelines.
Look at me and look at Eazy and say, you know, what do I need a bat to, to force him to do a few things? I mean, if I stood up tall and that Eric was, if he walked between my legs, excuse my French, people probably think he was my
Suge tried to destroy my record company with the help of others, Dre. So right now we're getting everything back together and we finna come out, fully loaded.
And Eazy said, you know this guy Suge Knight? I said, yeah. He says, well, I'm gonna kill him.
Andre wanted Eazy dead.
See, Dre now works for somebody that used to work for him. And how he claims that Death Row is his, it's somebody else. It's a bodyguard that used to work for Dre. Dre now works for him. Psst, buddy boy, watch your back.
In the 90s, Eazy-E and Suge Knight had a feud that escalated into both labels going at each other, spawning the Ruthless vs. Death Row beef. This beef got really serious, with lives being threatened on both sides. Before we get into this, I want to make sure y'all are subscribed to the channel, and if you want to watch this video early and uncut, make sure to head over to my Patreon and support the channel. For just $2, you get access to videos early, uncut, and uncensored. But without further ado, let's get into it. On September 7th, 1964, Eric Lynn Wright was born to his father Richard and mother Kathy Wright. Eazy was born and raised in the city of Compton in California. Eazy grew up in the Kelly Park section in East Compton, often referred to as the East Side. Compton was riddled with gang violence throughout Eazy's childhood, so it wouldn't take long for Eazy-E to get himself involved in the streets. Eazy would eventually begin selling drugs and doing robberies at an early age, and would eventually become a member of the Kelly Park Compton Crips, formerly known as the Kelly Park Hustlers. Their neighborhood stretches from Alondra Boulevard to Greenleaf Boulevard, surrounded by enemies west of the Atlantic Drive Compton Crips and east of the neighborhood Compton Crips. In the 1980s, all three Crip sets I just mentioned were close allies and would often hang out at Kelly Park. The Kelly Park Compton Crips and the neighborhood Compton Crips referred to their unofficial alliance as Kelly Park Neighborhood. This is when Eazy-E would begin his friendship with MC Ren, who was also a member of the Kelly Park Compton Crips. The Kelly Park Compton Crips have several rivals with different blood sets, like the Hollywood Piru, Elm Street Piru, and the Mob Piru, which Suge Knight was a part of, but we will get into that later. After spending several years hustling throughout the 80s, Eazy would acquire a lot of money from selling drugs. He later stashed away a significant amount of product for his cousin Horace Butler. Butler was eventually killed, leaving Eazy with that huge stash of drugs that he sold. After the death of his cousin, Eazy was looking for a way to make legit money and leave the gang life so he doesn't end up dead or in jail. With hip-hop on the rise and the talent in the area, Eazy-E decided to make his way into the music business. Eazy's best friend MC Ren was already on board with the idea, so Eazy began hosting mixtape cassettes for DJs in Compton. Eazy would also throw some lyrics in throughout the tape, so people started knowing him throughout LA. He was already known in Compton for the work he did in the streets. Eazy-E would eventually get connected with local artist Dr. Dre in 1986, who just left his group, the World Class Wrecking Crew, to pursue hip-hop music. Along with that was DJ Yella and a rapper named Ice Cube, who just left his rap group CIA. Ice Cube and Dre were connected by Dre's cousin Sir Jinx, who was a member of CIA. Eazy would begin working with Dre, Cube, Yella, MC Ren, the DOC, and Arabian Prince. They eventually formed the group NWA and would begin going to the studio together. After that, Eazy and his manager at the time, Jerry Heller, decided to launch their own label, Ruthless Records, in early 1987 and sign all members of NWA, besides Ice Cube and Arabian Prince, who refused to sign with Ruthless, which we will get into later on. During a studio session session with NWA, they all convinced Eazy-E to rap a song that Ice Cube wrote and Dre produced called Boys in the Hood. The track was originally intended for another group that was signed to Ruthless called HBO, but they rejected it. Eazy-E agreed to rap the track, so they all spent the night in the studio recording the track. On March 3rd, 1987, the track was officially released when Eazy-E put up $7,000 of his own money and 5,000 copies of the 12-inch vinyls for the track, thus officially launching Ruthless Records. The song became a local hit after Eazy and Jerry Heller got distribution through Priority Records through Brian Turner.
And my 6'4", docking the freaks,
what up?
clocking the dough,
What?
went to the park to get the scoop,
What up?
knuckleheads out there in cold shoes.
What
blue.
pulled up?
A car pulls up, who can it be? A brass Camino rolling Kilo G.
Come
He
on,
rolled down
come
the window
on,
and he
come on.
started to say, it's all about making that GTA. Cause the boys in the hood are always hard. You don't talking that trash, we'll pull your car.
The record would explode, selling well over 500,000 copies throughout LA. After that, Eazy-E and NWA would go on to be a massive success with the release of their compilation album NWA and the Posse later in 1987, Eazy-E's solo project Eazy Does It, and NWA's debut album Straight Outta Compton in 1989. At the peak of their success as a group is where problems would begin internally. It started with Ice Cube, who left the group after a dispute with Jerry Heller and Eazy-E, feeling as if he wasn't paid enough. Ice Cube did write a lot of NWA and Eazy-E's material, including Boys in the Hood, 8 Ball, and others alongside with the DOC. Cube's manager, Patricia Charbonnet, told Cube to look over the paperwork before signing to Ruthless. Cube refused to sign while at the Doubletree Hotel in Phoenix, Arizona, saying, in quotes,
I said, I can't sign the contract because I don't know what's in it. I'm trying to have you get it to my people and you won't do it, so I need to see what's in that contract before I sign it.
After going over the paperwork, the alleged amount Cube was offered was $75,000, which Cube saw as ridiculous given that the records he wrote brought in millions of dollars. Cube would end up leaving NWA in December '89 over this dispute and filed a lawsuit against Jerry Heller, but it would be settled out of court. Cube would then go on his own at just 20 years old, while NWA remained a group without him. Eazy-E didn't take kindly to Ice Cube's departure from NWA. Ice Cube felt as if he was the backbone of the group. He wrote the songs, he made Eazy a star with Boys in the Hood and 8 Ball, his first 2 hits, also writing 3 songs on his debut album, which was certified platinum in June of 1989. Cube thought NWA would implode. He was the second member of NWA to leave the group after Arabian Prince. On the other hand, Eazy felt like Ice Cube was ungrateful after Eazy gave him light by promoting their music throughout his label. Eazy didn't ask Cube to write his music. He was persuaded. It wasn't his idea, but Eazy saw Cube as a traitor for leaving the group after only 1 album. This would lead to NWA dissing Ice Cube on their EP 100 Miles and Runnin', so that's Eazy's story on how he got established in the rap game. Ruthless would go on to sign multiple artists in the 80s and early 90s like Michel'le, Philip Fresh Crew, Above the Law, Bone Thugs and Harmony, and more. Now let's get into Suge Knight and how the beef began. Marion Hugh Knight was born on April 19th, 1965 in Compton, California. As a child, he got the nickname Sugar Bear from his father, which was shortened to Suge. Suge actually didn't grow up gangbanging as most believe, but he did grow up in the east side of Compton in a city called Linwood, which was territory of the east side Mob Piru. The Mob Piru were closely affiliated with the Leaders Park Piru, just located south across Rosecrans. Suge always was affiliated with Bloods growing up, but instead he focused more on becoming an athlete rather than gangbanging. Suge did often shake down the wealthy white kids when they were in the area. Standing at 6'2", 250 plus pounds, Suge was intimidating. Suge attended Linwood High School and played football in the early 80s as a defensive end. Suge Knight was friends with a man named Dwayne Keefe D. Davis. Keefe D would get involved in gang life early on, becoming a member of the Southside Crips. Their turf is from Alondra North to Greenleaf South between Santa Fe West and Long Beach Boulevard East. While Suge grew up in Mob Piru territory, which was a rival of the Southside Crips, him and Keefe D remained friends because Suge was a good kid who just played football and didn't claim any sets. Suge and Keefe D actually played football together as kids. Now, what makes this interesting is that Keefe D also was friends with Eazy-E, so he grew up with both Eazy-E and Suge Knight. Although Eazy was a member of the Kelly Park Compton Crips, he had the entire Alondra backing him because he was so well respected. Keefe D used to actually cook kilos of at Eazy-E's mom's house with him.
We used to cook at Eazy-E Mama House. We used to cook keys over there. Cook up a key.
Keefy D would follow a different path than Suge, getting more involved in becoming a gangster as Suge was pursuing his football career. Suge would eventually play football at El Camino College, which was a public community college in Alondra Park. In 1985, Suge would be transferred to the University of Nevada, playing for 2 years. This is when Suge's life would change forever. In the 1987 NFL Draft, Suge went undrafted, but he was offered a contract from the San Francisco 49ers. But Suge got into an argument with his friend, prompting Suge to pull out a pistol and actually shoot his friend Ricky Crocker in Las Vegas. His friend lived with non-life-threatening injuries, while Suge got a slap on the wrist for the shooting and was put on probation for 5 years. The 49ers also retracted the contract that they had offered Suge, so it looked like his football dreams would be shattered, until he was invited to the Los Angeles Rams training camp, but was cut by the team during camp. Luck would be on Suge's side again. When the 1987 NFL player strike came, Suge was brought onto the Rams as a replacement player, but only played 2 games. So hip-hop's most notorious bully, Suge Knight, played 2 NFL games. After his short-lived football career, Suge set his sights on the music business, seeing rap music explode in Compton. Suge's first step was in 1988, when he began bouncing from music venues throughout Los Angeles. At an after party, he would meet Bobby Brown. When a fan went to hit Bobby, Suge stopped him from doing so and would immediately be hired as Bobby Brown's security guard. At this time, Bobby Brown was set to go on tour, but Bobby actually had money on his head with guys wanting to kill him, so he thought about canceling the tour. Suge confronted the men out to kill Bobby and actually made them apologize. That's when word got around about Suge. While on tour, Suge was learning the music business, taking whatever he can in and learning about publishing. Suge saw how artists and writers were getting screwed out of their publishing, so he wanted to manage artists himself to give them their fair publishing. Suge would begin managing several artists like Mary J. Blige, the DOC, and Mario Chocolate Johnson. In 1990, Vanilla Ice dropped his colossal hit record, Ice Ice Baby, which was the biggest song in the world at the time, selling millions and millions of copies each week. Mario Chocolate Johnson was Vanilla Ice's ghostwriter, and he was the one who actually wrote Ice Ice Baby. Chocolate and Vanilla Ice met at a nightclub in Texas. Chocolate was in Texas to help his father with the family business. The problems between them started when Vanilla Ice dropped his album To The Extreme on September 3rd, 1990. Chocolate was paid to write 5 records for the album. He came with 9 songs to choose from, but Vanilla Ice allegedly took all 9 tracks and credited himself as the sole writer. Suge Knight caught wind of this, so he started following Vanilla Ice everywhere he went with big bodyguards. Whether he was out eating or at his hotel, Suge was there with his bodyguards intimidating Vanilla Ice. Suge would end up getting Vanilla Ice to sign over the rights to his song Ice Ice Baby, but there's different sides to the stories. One side claims that Suge and his bodyguards came into his hotel without warning, and when he arrived, Suge and his guys were already there. Suge then allegedly brought Vanilla Ice to the balcony, making him look over to the edge, asking him if he knows how high they are. Then allegedly proceeded to dangle Vanilla Ice off the balcony by his ankles if he didn't sign the paper. The other side, which is the true side, is that Suge and his guys showed up and had a talk with Vanilla Ice about Ice Ice Baby, to which Vanilla Ice agreed to sign the paper. Chocolate, who was there during the incident, has confirmed himself that Suge never dangled Vanilla Ice off of a balcony, and that's just an old folktale. Now, instead of clearing his name, Suge liked the fact that people thought he was a gangster. It added to his reputation, and now Suge's name was getting around more. During this time, Dr. Dre was frustrated with Eazy-E and Ruthless Records because he felt as if he wasn't getting paid what he should have gotten paid. On top of that, Eazy and Jerry Heller became partners, but Eazy actually wanted to be partners with Dre, so Dre felt like more of a worker than a business partner. Eazy-E blames the NWA breakup on Brian Turner of Priority Records, saying, in quotes, "If Brian hadn't been involved, NWA would still be together. He was talking to Cube and Dre, telling them that they could do solo stuff with him and giving them checks under the table." Eazy also claimed that Turner did not give him a fair share of the money being made off ruthless artists he brought to Priority, like the DOC and Michelet. Suge and the DOC wanted to start their own label away from Eazy-E and Ruthless because the DOC was also frustrated with Ruthless. DOC and Suge needed Dre on their team because they knew what a musical mastermind he was, so if they got Dre, they knew that this label would be a guaranteed success. Suge did what he was best at, bully his way to get what he wants. So he started showing up at the studio while NWA was recording. Dre would start hanging out with Suge more and being in the studio less, as the two were forming a friendship. Suge's mentality is whatever he wants, he goes and gets it no matter who's in his way. Eazy never liked Suge, and this is when tensions would begin brewing between them because he saw how Suge was showing up at the studio uninvited. Eazy felt some type of way about Suge trying to little man him because Eazy's a gangster. He's not going to take no BS from anybody, especially some football player who in his eyes was portraying the role of a gangster. Suge would keep showing up at Dre and Eazy's pool parties, video shoots, just everywhere, to the point that Miss Chalet started to even question why this guy is even here. Suge eventually got Dre in on the idea of starting their own label. So now Dre, the DOC, and Miss Chalet were all on board with ditching Ruthless for Suge Knight's label. There was one huge problem. All three artists were locked in a contract with Ruthless Records. Suge contacted Jerry Heller, asking for copies of Dre, the DOC, and Miss Chalet's contract because anyone who signs a contract is entitled to have a copy of it. Jerry refused to let Suge strong-arm him into giving their contracts, telling Suge that they can't let Dre get his contract. Around this time, Suge Knight would start becoming affiliated with the Mob Piru, which is the blood set that was from his old neighborhood. Suge and his goons went to the Ruthless Records lawyer's office with baseball bats demanding the contracts. Suge was able to get copies of their contracts through his gangster business tactics, so he immediately called a meeting at Dre's mansion in Calabasas to go over their Ruthless contracts. According to Miss Chalet, they were getting 2 cents for each sale. Dre was pissed that Suge told him this, so he wanted out of Ruthless and wanted nothing to do with Jerry or Eazy for that matter. After finding out that he was getting paid not nearly of what he felt he deserved, Dr. Dre was all in on Suge Knight's vision on starting their own record label. Suge's good friend, Dick Griffey, who was the CEO of Solar Records, mentored him on how to start his own record label, and even let Suge have a studio space on the 3rd floor of their building. Dick Griffey and president of Solar Records, Virgil Roberts, were helping Suge pay his bills as well because Suge was struggling financially trying to get his record label up and running. Suge, being broke, needed a financial partner, so his attorney David Kenner introduced Suge to Michael Harry O. Harris. Harry O was a convicted drug dealer who had made millions in the drug game. Harry O had requested that David Kenner bring Suge to him after hearing that he was involved with Dr. Dre, so their meeting took place in the prison he was being held in. Harry O put up $1.5 million of his own money to set up his parent company named GF Music, which is short for Godfather Music. Death Row Records was then made a subsidiary of GF Music. Harry O was actually the one to come up with the name Death Row based on his situation in prison. The funny part about this is that Harry O and Suge Knight actually wanted to partner with Eazy-E before Dre parted ways, but Eazy-E declined the offer, saying that he's already established over at Ruthless. Suge came up with a plan to get Dre, Miss Chalet, and the DLC released from their Ruthless contracts. In April 1991, Dre called Eazy to meet him at the studio to talk it over and patch things up. Not knowing it was a setup, because Dre is not a dangerous person, Eazy agreed and headed over to the studio. When he arrived, there was no sign of Dre, but Suge and 2 of his goons came out. They allegedly started jumping Eazy-E. Now this was all planned well because the recording studio is soundproof, so no one would hear what was happening. Suge asked for Eazy to sign the contracts, to which Eazy refused. Eazy wasn't backing down, but Suge pulled a piece of paper out of his pocket and handed it to Eazy. Eazy unfolded the paper, and it was his mother's address written down. Suge said that this is where they're going next if Eazy didn't sign, so Eazy-E signed the releases for their contracts. This rumor has been around for a while now that Eazy-E was jumped in the studio by Suge, but the other side of it is that Eazy-E was never touched by anyone. Suge and his goons had Eazy-E at gunpoint to sign the releases. Both sides seem believable. Suge is the type of guy to set this up and jump Eazy to sign the release. However, Suge wasn't an idiot. He knew that if word got back to Compton, then Suge would have been wanted because Eazy-E had all the Crips backing him. Therefore, I believe the second side is that Eazy-E was set up, and it did happen, but he just didn't get jumped like the folktale claims he did. Eazy was never touched that night. No way Eazy-E would get jumped like that and do nothing about it. Eazy was an authentic gangster from Compton who wasn't scared of anyone. Eazy was smart. When signing the releases, he actually put down a fake signature to make it seem like he never signed the contracts to begin with. Eazy-E himself confirmed that this incident took place during his July 1994 interview with the Source magazine. "They threatened my family, saying we know where your mother lives and shit." It was at this moment that the Eazy and Suge Knight beef had begun. Eazy-E always viewed Suge as Dre's lackey, who now is acting tough after he started becoming successful and aligned himself with the Mob Piru. This would also fully kick off the Eazy-E and Dr. Dre beef because although tensions were rising, it was just business and Eazy-E never actually had a problem with Dre. Even during the beef, Eazy-E would give Dre his props and actually play Dre's album The Chronic on his radio show because he really liked it. Eazy knew Dre was harmless and would keep the beef on wax. Suge was the one who was the gangster backing up Dre. Eazy felt betrayed that Dre set him up. Many people still don't know this. Dre set up Eazy to get confronted by Suge that night. Immediately after this incident, Eazy called his lawyers, and on behalf of Ruthless Records, a lawsuit was filed under the RICO Act. Sony was also named in the lawsuit, saying they supported the actions that led to Dre's unlawful release. David Kenner, who was representing Dre and Suge, said that Eazy willingly released Dre from his contract, to which the RICO lawsuit would eventually be dismissed. Now, there was another lawsuit by Ruthless against Dre and Suge claiming damages of more than $200 million as a result of Dre leaving. But Eazy wasn't at a total loss, which we will get into later on in the timeline. During this time, Dre was struggling with money at the time and his alcohol addiction. His life was on a downward spiral in 1991 and 1992. His relationship with Miss Chalet was falling apart due to Dre's alcohol problem, so he was desperate to get his career rolling. Eazy actually planned on killing Suge Knight after this incident. He had a murder plan ready. He was going to go to Suge's house at night while everyone was asleep with silenced weapons and take out Suge along with everyone in the house to leave no witnesses. Eazy called Jerry Heller and said that he wants to kill Suge Knight because he thinks Suge is a real problem, to which Jerry Heller talked him out of killing Suge Knight, but later says that he regrets talking Eazy out of doing it because Eazy wasn't all talk. He would have did it no matter the consequences. Jerry Heller later revealed this in a later interview.
And Eazy said, "You know this guy Suge Knight?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, I'm going to kill him." He said, "This guy's going to be a problem, and I think I should kill him."
Killer, 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 killer. Hey, motherfucker! Hey, what's up, Eazy?
And you want to kill this guy? He would have done it for sure, by himself.
Do you think he would have killed Suge Knight?
I think so. I think that he was going to go do it.
Psst, buddy boy, watch your back.
Not only was Eazy after Suge, but this also meant that Eazy was at war with the Mob Piru because the Crips were already enemies with most of the Bloods in Compton, so this seemed to be heading into the direction of not just a label beef, but a deadly gang war. Jerry Heller got really scared of this whole situation, so he hired an ex-Israeli soldier named Mike Klein to be the head of security operations at Ruthless. This would cause Suge to cool off on the threats towards Ruthless. Eazy was not scared to fight Suge, but rather kill him. There is a story of Eazy-E once knocking out a 300-pound guy at a video shoot with one punch, so Eazy can throw hands, but he rather just silenced Suge. Eazy and Mike Klein became real close because Eazy liked his Rambo mentality. The first thing that Klein told Suge was that if he ever comes back, he would chop him up and put him in dumpsters all over the city. He also told Suge that if he ever comes to the office uninvited again, he would leave in a box. Everyone had guns, even Jerry Heller was strapped. There were guns in all of the rooms at Ruthless Records offices. It was like a mafia movie. Eazy-E showed a journalist of The Source magazine a wall of guns at one of his houses in Norwalk, California. He showed this off to the journalist in hopes that he would write about it to let Suge know that he is strapped and ready for war. In February 1992, Suge celebrated the launch of Death Row with a launch party at a famous restaurant in Beverly Hills, Chasen's. This would help Death Row get some more notoriety and announce big things to come for the label. Suge had it set. He had his writer in the DOC and Dr. Dre. The ball was starting to roll for Death Row, while the ship was starting to sink over at Ruthless. Dre's stepbrother, Warren G, played Dre a cassette tape of a rapper from Long Beach named Snoop Dogg. Warren G being from Long Beach and Snoop being from there as well, they went back. In 1990, they formed the rap trio 213 along with Nate Dogg. Snoop grew up in Long Beach, surrounded by Crips. He became a member of the Rolling 20 Crips on the east side of Long Beach. The Rolling 20s were located off of the Pacific Coast Highway from 10th Street South to 21st Street North between Magnolia West and MLK East. Snoop began selling drugs out of his mom's house in his teen years, but after the house was shot up, his mother would eventually find out about what Snoop was doing. After finding out her son is a drug-dealing gangbanger, she kicked a young Snoop Dogg out of the house. Snoop never took rapping too seriously, just enjoyed doing it as a hobby, ever since he was in the 6th grade. Snoop and his childhood friends Nate Dogg and Warren G would form the group 213 and recorded some tapes. But after Warren G played Snoop's cassette for Dre, his life would change forever. Dre contacted Snoop to potentially sign him to Death Row in 1991 and appointed the DOC to teach Snoop how to structure lyrics and separate the themes into verses, hooks, and choruses. After that, Dre and Snoop would begin working together, and on April 2nd, 1992, they dropped their debut track, Deep Cover, for the soundtrack to the movie Deep Cover. This would be Dre's debut single as a solo artist since his split from NWA, and Snoop's first appearance on a record release. Deep Cover became an instant classic, and fans were now ready for Dr. Dre to emerge as a solo artist. As Death Row was off to a great start, Ruthless had to go through a complete rebuild after losing their biggest artists. Around this time, Eazy-E became close friends with an up-and-coming rapper named Tupac. Pac had already dropped his debut album Tupacalypse Now in 1991 through TNT Records, which was a West Coast-based hip-hop label. Pac did not like the label because when he went to turn in his album Doggystyle, they told him that his music isn't marketable. A lot of labels felt this way about Pac. That's why he struggled getting a deal, because no label wanted to sign an unmarketable rapper. Eazy and Pac had been friends for a couple of years at this point. Initially, Pac was cool with Ice Cube and always looked up to NWA and saw them as an inspiration. Pac wanted Eazy to sign him to Ruthless Records, to which at first Eazy agreed to sign him, but he wanted Pac to go at Dre and Cube since those are the enemies of Ruthless. Pac agreed to do so, but would begin working on his second album strictly for my N-words. Meanwhile, Eazy-E was focusing on building his solo career since he had no more Dre, DOC, or even MC Ren, who left the label after the release of NWA's second album. Ren left because him and Eazy-E weren't that close anymore, and Ren felt as if Eazy wasn't doing much to really help his solo career, but there was no bad blood between them. Ren just felt like he wanted to go do his own thing. That left Eazy with DJ Yella, the only remaining NWA member on Eazy's team. Prior to Dre's departure from NWA in 1990 to 1991, Eazy was working on his next album with Dre called Temporary Insanity. If you noticed, Eazy did photo shoots in a straitjacket and a hockey mask for the rollout of the album, and in interviews saying that he's temporarily insane.
You have an album coming out, right?
Of course.
Temporarily Insane.
Yeah, kind of.
I've been seeing interviews with you wearing like straitjackets and masks and all sorts of crazy things. Does that have to do with your album? Mm-hmm. So you're temporarily insane right now. And this is the thing you're going through right now, but temporary, right?
I just took my medicine not too long ago, so.
So you're okay for the interview, right? You're not gonna like freak out or anything, right?
Not yet, I don't think.
This is my man, the crazy man, Eazy-E in the house.
Hey, he's temporarily insane. Temporarily insane.
Finishing the new album, finishing Eazy's new album, Temporary Insanity.
Dre would begin working on his debut album, The Chronic. On November 19th, 1992, Dre dropped the lead single, Nothing But a G-Thang, featuring Snoop Dogg. This track was a smash hit and was exactly the kind of reception Dre wanted as he got closer to his debut album, which was set to drop on December 15th, 1992. When it came time to drop the album, it was a great success, going to sell over 3 million copies. It was clear that Dre and Death Row are taking over the rap game with a major breakthrough. That same day of December 15th, 1992, Eazy-E dropped his EP 5150 Home for the Sick, which was used to promote his upcoming album, Temporary Insanity. But little did Eazy know that this would backfire, because on the Chronic is a track called with Dre Day, featuring Snoop Dogg. This track would serve as a diss track towards a couple of people, Tim Dogg, Uncle Luke, but the main rapper being dissed was Eazy-E. Dre starts off by saying that the hood Eazy throws up, which is Kelly Park Crip, and the people in it don't respect him.
The hood you threw up with, cause you grew up with, don't even respect your ass.
Dre says that Eazy used to be his homie and his ace, but now he wants to slap the taste out of his mouth.
Used to be my homie, used to be my ace, now I wanna slap the taste out your mouth.
Dre then says that he's gonna make Eazy bow down to death row. He then says that Eazy effed him out of money, so now he's clapping back with this diss song.
Make it bow down to the road, f***ing me, now you little hoe.
Dre then references Eazy-E's track, Easy Street, and then tells Eazy to put his Compton hat and Lokes on, telling Eazy to watch his back or he might get smoked.
So strap on your Compton hat, your Lokes, and watch your back, cause you might get smoked, low.
On the interlude, Dre says that he has Eazy's record company surrounded, telling Jerry Heller to put the candy down and let the little boy go.
We have your record company surrounded. Put down the candy and let the little boy go.
While referencing Eazy-E's hit song, We Want Easy, which Dre produced. On the third verse, Dre says that Luke thought he was sleazy, or a mark, because he used to hang with Eazy.
Must have thought I was sleazy, I thought I was a mark, cause I used to hang with Eazy.
Dre then says that he has his gun to the side of Eazy's White Sox hat, which Eazy-E was notorious for wearing gang member hats.
Spotty got him as I pulls out my strap, got my chrome to the side of his White Sox hat.
On the outro, Snoop tells Eazy, Tim Dogg, and Luke to eat a big fat
Eazy-E, Eazy-E, Eazy-E can eat a big fat.
In early 1993, the music video would premiere, featuring an Eazy-E lookalike called Sleazy E getting chased throughout the video. Now, on the original version of Dre Day, in the beginning of the track, Dr. Dre has a message for Eazy-E, calling him a penguin-looking motherfucker.
Penguin-looking motherfucker. Yeah.
On track 16, ain't shit, the track is about women who aren't respectable. Dre decided to use his verse to diss Eazy. He name drops Eazy by his government name, referring to him as a bitch. Dre then says that they were both tight, making hit after hit.
I used to know a named Merrick Wright, tight than the motherfucker with the gangster beat.
Dre then says that Eazy was hanging with a white bitch, which he was referring to Jerry Heller, and what I mentioned earlier about Jerry and Eazy becoming partners instead of Dre and Eazy.
I didn't give a what was that, but she was hanging with a white bitch doing the shit she do.
Dre then mentions the 2 lawsuits that Eazy filed against him and Death Row.
She can't hang with the street, she found herself show, so now she taking me to court.
Eazy was not going to take lightly to this, so now it was full-on war between Ruthless and Death Row, on and off wax. Earlier I said that Eazy did not take the complete loss when the lawsuit was dismissed. Well, now that comes into play. On December 3rd, 1992, Ruthless Records made an arrangement with Interscope Records. Ruthless assigned their rights to Dre as an exclusive artist and producer over to Interscope. In return, Interscope agreed to give Ruthless a certain percentage of royalties they make off anything Dre works on for Interscope. Basically, Eazy was getting paid for the diss records Dre made on him, so this was a chess move by Eazy.
I can talk about them all day. I mean, I make money from Dre and Snoop, so it don't matter.
Meanwhile, in February 1993, Tupac dropped his second album, Strictly for My N-Words. This is when Eazy-E would cut ties with Pac when he saw that Ice Cube appeared on the album. After Pac agreed to diss him for Eazy, Pac went to Eazy-E's house asking him to sign him, to which Eazy opened the door and said no, then closed the door. That was the end of that. Eazy then completely scrapped his second album, Temporary Insanity, to work on a diss album towards Dre. In 1993, Eazy would do a complete overhaul over at Ruthless, signing new talent like Bone Thugs and Harmony, Gangsta Dresta, and BG Knockout. He tried signing DJ Quick a couple years back in 1990, which he was good friends with. Quick signed with Profile Records instead, but later regretted the decision when Eazy-E offered him a $1 million advance to sign to Ruthless. Eventually, Profile Records sent a cease and desist to Ruthless. How amazing would it have been if DJ Quick signed to Ruthless? But these two would have ended up bumping heads because DJ Quick is close friends with Suge Knight ever since the late 80s, and in 1993, they would be in talks again. Suge was even credited as the executive producer of Quick's third album, Safe Plus Sound. Maybe this was Suge's way of trying to get back at Eazy, since DJ Quick and Eazy were good friends, and Quick decided not to sign to Ruthless. Anyways, despite Dre's success with his debut album, The Chronic, 1992 was not a good year for him. Dre was in legal trouble from ongoing cases, one for assaulting Dee Barnes, a former Fox TV rap talk show host who claimed Dre assaulted her in January 1991. Dre was fined $2,500 and sentenced to 240 hours of community service and 24 months probation. Also dealing with the racketeering lawsuit filed by Ruthless, which I discussed earlier. Dr. Dre was also dealing with issues with his drinking problem, and his relationship with Michelle was falling apart. Plus, Dre was getting treated badly on death row. It became a very toxic working environment. As Suge's money got longer, he started hiring the Mob Piru. Eventually, death row security was just all Mob Pirus. Dre couldn't work comfortably, being surrounded by a bunch of Bloods at all times. And Snoop being a Crip, him and the Dogg Pound weren't going to get along with the Mob Pirus Suge had hired. Dre also was convicted for drunk driving in 1991, so his legal troubles were just getting out of hand to where he was close to facing jail time if he doesn't cool off. Somewhere along the lines, Dr. Dre was also shot. According to Warren G and Snoop Dogg, Dre's life was falling apart. His relationship, his work environment, his legal trouble, and alcohol addiction were all taking over his life. While Eazy-E was on top of the world, making millions of dollars, rebuilding his label, making money off of NWA's previous albums, his own work, his artists that he was signing, and anything Dre and Snoop does, Eazy-E seemingly had all the power. Dre and Suge did not like this, because they wanted Death Row to be the #1 label on the West Coast and in the world, so they saw Ruthless as competition. Suge knew that if he tried to make a move on Eazy, then Eazy will most likely just kill him on sight. Suge wasn't scared, but neither was Eazy. It was a dangerous combination of two guys who had power, money, and gangster intentions. Less than a month after Dre dropped The Chronic, on January 10th, 1993, Dre was driving drunk in his 1987 Ferrari throughout Beverly Hills when he actually led the police on a chase. After being caught, he failed a field sobriety test and had a blood alcohol level of 0.16, which is twice the legal limit of 0.08. While his protege, Snoop Dogg, also found himself in trouble with the law. In 1993, Snoop Dogg would be charged with first-degree murder. Snoop got into a heated altercation with rival gang members in August 93 outside of his apartment. Snoop and his homies hopped in their Jeep and circled the block with their windows down, taunting the gang members. One of the gang members, named Little Smooth, reached back for his .380 on his waistband. Snoop's homie Malik saw this, so Snoop ducked whilst Malik fired from the Jeep, killing Little Smooth. Snoop and his homies fled the scene, where a warrant would be placed on Snoop Dogg for a suspected murder. A couple days later, while the police were looking for him, Snoop decided that he was going to turn himself in, but first he performed at the 1993 MTV VMAs alongside Dr. Dre, and after the show, he turned himself into authorities, where he would be charged with first-degree murder. Snoop would be released on a $1 million bail, and his trial wouldn't actually begin until 1996. While Death Row was going through all these legal troubles, Eazy thought that Dre and Snoop were doing all this to make themselves look like gangsters and live out a fantasy, as E explains it.
Where we from, Compton and Long Beach, they don't get along with each other. See, like people in Compton really don't, claim Dre as being from Compton, and they don't claim Snoop from being from Long Beach. So it's like, it's a whole little gimmick he got. It's not real.
NWA is no more as far as I'm concerned, unless it's on death row. If you're not getting treated right in the place, you're not going to stay there. That's all that was. I guess they didn't respect my talent, so now they're suffering the consequences. Eazy-E, you're dropping like a brick, boy. See ya.
Have you and Dre ran into each other on one-on-one?
Yeah, Dre stays right around the corner from me, but when he sees me, he ducks his head because he's scared to face me,
Why?
Why? Because he's screwed up. Oh, somebody put him up to that. See, Dre now works for somebody that used to work for him. And how he claims that Death Row is his, it's somebody else. It's a bodyguard that used to work for Dre. Mm-hmm. Dre now works for him. So he all screwed up. Then it was like a little threatening and a little everything. It got kind of serious. Mm-hmm. Where it got so serious with Dre, he owed these people so much money that he burnt his house down. He ended up getting shot. because he owed money and he got nothing but problems. You see all the other problems he having now. On the road, they canceled his tour, and then Snoop was involved in a drive-by shooting.
Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. He out on bail right now. But hey, good luck, brother.
I didn't force him into doing nothing. Eazy-E is a gangster. Eazy is this big-time gangster, right? You know, that's the man. How am I gonna be able to force him into doing anything?
I make money off him for the next 6 years and everything that he touches. So I hope the Chronic blow up, so you know I could buy me a new home or something, you know.
After hearing Dre and Snoop dissing him, Eazy scrapped his unfinished album Temporary Insanity to work on an entire EP dedicated to dissing Dre, Snoop, and Death Row. The album Temporary Insanity was supposed to drop on May 11th, 1993, with most of the production handled by Dre before he left NWA and departed from Ruthless. On August 26th, 1993, Eazy-E dropped his response diss track on Dre, Snoop, and Death Row called Real Mother Effin' G's. The first verse, Eazy addresses Dre, referring to him as Doctor, telling him to watch the sniper, referring to his track Neighborhood Sniper, and that this track will be a one-shot, one-kill, similar to a sniper rifle.
Hey yo, Doctor, here's another proper track, and it's fat, watch the sniper, time to pay the piper.
Then calling Dre a wannabe loc, seeing as how Dre wasn't really a gangster like he claims on his records, so Eazy exposed that through the track. Eazy then says that the records he's making is paying him, going back to the arrangement between Interscope and Ruthless, where Eazy-E makes money off anything Dre or Snoop releases, basically sharing Death Row sales profits with his arch enemy, Suge Knight.
Then I hope that your fans understand when you talk about spraying me. The same records that you're making is paying me.
He then name drops Dre, Snoop, and Death Row when he says to mother F them.
Mother Dre, mother Snoop, mother Death Row. Yo, and here comes my left blow.
You're like a kid, you found a pup and now you're dapper, meaning that he found a pup, as in Snoop Dogg, so now Dre thinks he's dapper, which means to be in accordance, basically saying that he thinks he's a G now that he has Snoop by his side. Then asking Dre where he found an anorexic rapper, obviously referring to Snoop and his thin appearance.
You're like a kid, you found a puppy, now you're dapper, but tell me where the you found the anorexic rapper.
E then says that it's funny how Snoop talks about fighting and shooting, but he's only 60 pounds when he's wet and wearing boots. Obviously an exaggeration, but still funny.
Talking about who you go squabble with and who you shoot. You're only 60 pounds when you're wet and wearing boots.
Dresta comes in commenting on how they try to fade E on Dre Day, but Eazy-E once again acclaims that Dre Day meant Eazy's payday, which is a huge W for Eazy in this beef, making this public that he makes money off of Dre dissing him.
Damn, E, they tried to fade you on Dre Day,
but Dre Day only meant Eazy's payday.
E is saying that Dre is now a G-Thang, a reference to his track Nothing But a G-Thang, but when Dre was on the World Class Wrecking Crew doing techno music, he was a She-Thang. In the music video, Eazy-E showed old untouched photos of Dre from his days in the World Class Wrecking Crew, of him wearing makeup and dressing fruity. This was all new to many rap fans at the time who thought Dr. Dre was actually this hard gangster from Compton, when in reality, it was all an act.
All of a sudden, Dr. Dre is the G-Thang, but on his old album covers, he was a She-Thang.
The second verse is done by Dresta. He says that Dre is soft, but portrays the role of a gangster, but Dre hasn't broken a law in his life, but every time he raps, he talks about gangster stuff.
ain't broke a law in your life, yet every time you rap, you yap about the guns and knife.
Now you can say that this line about Dre never breaking any laws is false, because I just went over Dre's legal issues, but it's misinterpreted. Dresta is referring to Dre actually being in the streets, getting convicted for selling drugs or doing robberies, etc. So in that case, he is correct that Dre has never been arrested for anything gangsta related. Dresta calls Dre an actor who mastered the LA gangsta slang on his records.
Just take a good look at the nigga and you'll capture the fact that the bastard is simply just an actor.
He continues talking about Dre being a studio gangsta and has a message to all other studio gangsters, which could be a shot at the rest of Death Row. Dresta says that he did dirt and put in work, so since he did that in his past, he has stripes to rap about that.
See, I did dirt, put in work, and many niggas can vouch that. So since I got stripes, I got the right to rap about that.
Dresta says he's tired of suburbia guys like Dre who claim they're from the projects but haven't done anything in the street. Here, Dresta is saying that he thinks Dre tried a gangbang around the time of the Peace Treaty. The Peace Treaty was in 1992 when rival gangs in LA agreed to reduce the violence in LA. The truce was signed by leaders of the Grape Street Crips and PJ Watts Crips, Bounty Hunter Blood, and Hacienda Village Bloods. This truce would sadly be overshadowed by the Rodney King riots in LA that occurred just days after being signed. Dresta is saying that Dre dropped his album The Chronic in 1992 and began acting like a tough gangster when the truce was signed. Dresta clowns Dre for wearing khakis while he raps and says that he tries to sag them pretending to be a G but floods at the same time, meaning his pants rise like high waters. He also says the word mob, which could in fact be a subtle diss towards Suge Knight and his mob Pyru.
Wearing khakis and mob while you rhyme little try to say, but you're flooding at the same time.
Gangsta Dresta and his brother BG Knockout were actually members of the Nutty Block Compton Crips. Their gang is located on the west side of Compton. Their neighborhood runs from Central Avenue to Wilmington between Greenleaf and Alondra. Dresta closes out the verse saying Dre's neighborhood doesn't accept him and he's scared to go and kick it in Compton because they don't respect him either.
And your set don't accept you. Scared to kick it with your homies cause you know they don't respect you.
BG Knockout comes in introducing himself, then dissing Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre by name calling them actors, pranksters, studio gangsters, and busters.
Dr. Dre and Snoop Doggy Dogg are f***ing actors, pranksters, studio gangsters, busters.
He then says that Dre needs to stop claiming his city because he's not from Compton and calls Death Row wannabes. The last verse, Eazy-E comes back saying that he never met an OG that never did any kind of gangsta activity, basically saying if Dre's an OG, then why hasn't he done any street things? Eazy mentions how they try to diss him, so now it's on.
I never met an OG who never did shit wrong. You tried to diss the Eazy-E, so now it's on.
He says that him and Snoop, which he calls Dre's doggy dog, he tells both of them to suck his doggy D, which is a word play on Snoop's nickname, Snoop Doggy Dog.
You and your doggy dog think that y'all hogging shit. Both of you could come and suck my dog.
Eazy then brings up when Dre assaulted D Barnes, saying that beating a woman doesn't make you anything, but some people think it makes a man.
Beating up a bitch don't make you, but then again, some think it makes a man.
Once again, E says that it's a trip how Dre went from the Wrecking Crew to being a hard gangster rapper. He claims that Dre wore lipstick during his days in the Wrecking Crew. Eazy says that at Death Row, he heard that he's getting treated like boot camp and that Dre has to follow his sergeant's directions or else.
And at Death Row, I hear you getting treated like boot camp. Gotta follow your sergeant's directions.
This goes back to what I stated earlier about Death Row being a very toxic work environment with Snoop and his Crips, Suge and his mob Pyru. It became difficult for Dre to work when there was gang members constantly around him. This comment aged extremely well because Eazy was ahead of the crowd when it came to Suge and his ways. He then closes the track telling Dre and the rest of Death Row to stay in their place and not step to real G's like himself. This was a brilliant response from Eazy, as the song became instantly iconic and was a hit. The best way to defeat your enemy was with a hit record that would become timeless. Nothing is more embarrassing than a diss track directed towards you being played everywhere. On top of this, it completely destroyed Dre's credibility as this hardcore gangster from Compton, revealing that Dre was on the Wrecking Crew while Eazy was in the streets. Even though Dre Day was the bigger song at the time due to it peaking at number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100, while Real Mother Effin' G's peaked at 42, I think Real Mother Effin' G's was the better diss track. For one, Dre was talking about how the hood Eazy grew up in doesn't respect him and how he's gonna smoke him, all of which are lies. After hearing Eazy's diss track, it became more obvious that Dre is just putting on an act. Dre really saying Compton doesn't respect Eazy, meanwhile Eazy-E had all the Crips in Compton backing him was just ridiculous. While being one of the greatest diss tracks of all time, Dre Day didn't damage Eazy-E's reputation at all. You can't try and say Eazy is a buster like Dre, whilst Dre used to wear makeup and do techno music. Nowadays, it's more accepted to be a fraud in hip-hop, but back then, authenticity was everything. If you were a phony, you were ruled out. The only reason why Dre wasn't completely doomed was because of just how talented he was. People didn't really seem to care he was a fake gangster like the mainstream audience. However, that doesn't change the fact that Eazy exposed a lot the general public didn't really know about Dr. Dre at the time while making a timeless classic. For that, I think Eazy-E won by default. What else was Dre gonna say about Eazy? More lies? Trying to say Eazy's a fake gangster with no proof at all to back it up? Eazy also had Dresta and BG Knocc on his record, two gangsters from Compton that look intimidating. Dre had Snoop, who was an official Crip from Long Beach and very well respected, but unfortunately, Snoop doesn't intimidate anyone. Eazy showcases that with his disses, saying that Snoop looks anorexic and that he shouldn't be talking about fighting and shooting when he weighs 60 pounds while being wet and wearing boots. These lines crush Snoop's chances at looking intimidating to Eazy. Snoop couldn't even pull the height card on Eazy because if you remember earlier, there is a story that Eazy knocked out a 300-pound security guard. What makes you think Eazy couldn't have done the same to Snoop? And the streets knew that Snoop couldn't dare step to Eazy on a street level. Eazy also embarrassed Dre by saying that he got paid for Dre's diss track. Dre put a lot of work into that track just to diss Eazy, even though Eazy-E was getting royalties from it, making Eazy look more powerful than Dre, especially when Eazy pointed out how Death Row was like boot camp, a line that aged like wine, given as how Death Row turned out under Suge Knight. Eazy-E also completely emasculated Dre by making him look fruity, by showing how he used to dress when he was a part of the world-class wrecking crew. Another rumor about Dre was that he was gay, to which Eazy was the one who really shed light on these rumors with Real Mother F&G's. On all accounts, Eazy won this portion of the beef, and seeing as how Dre never responded again, makes Eazy-E the clear winner. What was Dre gonna say or do that would hurt Eazy in the way that Eazy hurt Dre with Real Mother F&G's? One more factor I want to bring up will show further proof that Eazy won. As a gangster rapper claiming to be from a city like Dre and Eazy claim Compton, if your own city doesn't respect you, how can you ever be taken seriously, especially in the 1990s where legitimacy is everything? Eazy-E was the more legit out of the two. Don't get me wrong, Dre Day is one of the most iconic diss tracks and rap songs ever made. If that diss was directed at someone else, it would have been a lot more damaging, but a guy like Eazy-E who put Compton on the map in the first place is different. Can't get Compton to turn on the guy who put their city on the map and who was actually putting in work on the streets. On the music video, Eazy-E hired the same actor who played Sleazy-E in Dre Day and chased him out of Compton in the video, another clever move by Eazy. During this time, Dre's protege Snoop Dogg was working on his debut album Doggystyle, which had a massive amount of hype. Suge was smart. He used Snoop's murder case as free publicity for his debut album. Somewhere along the lines in 1993, Suge Knight threatened BG Knocc and Gangsta Dresta, saying that he wants to slap them. MC Ren was doing a performance which BG Knocc and Dresta attended because Eazy and his camp were on good terms with Ren. Suge Knight was there as well, so BG Knocc and Dresta confronted Suge about threatening to slap them, to which Suge would just say that he loves them and even offer them a deal with Death Row. Now this is according to BG Knocc, so take it how you will. On October 19th, 1993, Eazy-E dropped his diss record on Dre called It's On, which was an 8-track EP. The inside cover is completely dissing Dr. Dre. It plays as an obituary for Dre. He included a picture of Dre from his world-class wrecking crew days, pointing out his eyeshadow, eyeliner, etc. This EP included the hit diss track Real Mother F&G's, along with some more Death Row, Dre, and Snoop disses. On the track Still a N-Word, on the third verse, Eazy goes at Death Row, saying that if they want to diss him, F them and their whole crew. He then thanks Death Row for stocking his bank up, because Eazy makes money off of Dre and Snoop. Eazy then says that he's a gangster like Dresta and not Dr. Dre, because Dresta's an OG and Dre's a phony.
No, not the doctor, physician, or the MD. Dresta's an OG, doctor's a phony.
He says that only the real can chill with him and the rest can't F with him, which is a clear diss to Death Row.
Only the real still could chill with me, and the rest can't F with E.
The track titled It's On is a full-on diss track towards Dre, Snoop, and Death Row. Eazy starts off by mocking Snoop Dogg's iconic intro on Dre Day, but does his own play on it, telling Snoop to suck on these nuts.
Bow wow wow, yippee yo, yippee yay, doggy dogs in the house. Bow wow wow, yippee yo, yippee yay, suck on these nuts, suck on these nuts.
This then goes into Eazy's play on Nothing But a G Thing, saying that it's nothing but easy and he'll smoke two dudes, as in Dre and Snoop.
Ain't nothing but a G thing, baby. Two loped out niggas, so we're crazy.
It ain't nothing but easy, baby. He'll smoke two
niggas cause they crazy.
He then says that Dre talking doesn't faze him, but that punk Dre still pays him.
Talk a gang of shit, but it don't faze me. That punk nigga Dre still pays me.
Eazy starts verse 1 by addressing Dre, calling him a prankster and a storybook gangster. References Dre's time in the Wrecking Crew in '86.
Hey Mr. Prankster, prankster, storybook gangster. Back in '86 you wore the pumps and mascara.
Eazy says that once a bitch, always a bitch, but now Dre switched from being in the Wrecking Crew to being a gangster. He then calls Dre the F slur who wore a stethoscope that now sags his pants trying to act like a G.
But once a bitch is old, the bitch and now the fucking switch. Back with the stethoscope, now you sag.
Eazy says that Dre thinks he's a bigger man for body slamming women like D Barnes. Comments on how Dre now sports khakis and lokes, similar to how he dresses, basically saying Dre is a wannabe Eazy.
Body slamming makes a Dre a bigger man. Khakis, putting lokes in a G-Rod.
Asking Dre what set he's from, then references Rip Van Winkle, which is a story published in the 1800s about someone who fell asleep and woke up 20 years later in a changed world. So Dre basically fell asleep in the Wrecking Crew, then woke up and decided to be a gangster.
What set you from punk? What set you from ride? Rip Van Winkle sleep nigga woke up and became a G.
Eazy says that Dre doesn't impress him and references his album The Chronic, but refers to it as Bionic, the name of one of the world-class Wrecking Crew songs, He's Bionic.
Smoke a little shine, now you call it The Chronic. Niggas on the west side call it Bionic.
The second verse starts off with Eazy dissing Snoop, saying that he went to the cupboard to get Snoop Dogg a bone.
Oh, nigga, Eazy-E went to the cupboard to get Snoop Doggy Dogg a bone.
He then says here's another G, but says more letters in the alphabet because he's claiming the term G lost its meaning with Dre and Snoop.
Here's another G, or should I say a H, a I, a J, a K, a elemental P.
Eazy then does a wordplay on Snoop's part on Nothing But a G Thang, where he calls Snoop broke, and how he talks about smoking easy but won't do it.
It's the capital S-O-S, I'm fresh and double O-P, D-O-double-G-Y-D-O-double-G, you see.
P for the we'll see what broke as a joke, talking about you wanna smoke, the E to the A-Z-Y.
Then shouts out the east side of Compton where he's from, and that Snoop doesn't want to try.
Nigga, this is east side, Snoop Doggy Doggy Dogg, you wanna try?
Says that he has more juice than puppy water, a clear reference to Snoop Dogg, and says that he's gonna toss Snoop in the trunk with the other punk, meaning Dre.
First I'm gonna choke it, then I smoke it, then I'm gonna toss you in the back of my trunk with the other punk.
Says that he's smoking death row like a Philly blunt.
Smoking death row like I smoke a Philly blunt.
Verse 3, he continues going at Snoop, saying that people in Long Beach never heard of him, and people from Compton aren't down with Dre either.
From the LBC, they never heard of your G, and from the CPT ain't down with DRE.
He says that Snoop and Dre can fool the East Coast and Midwest to believe that they're gangsters, but in LA, it won't work.
You can fool the people on the East Coast and the Midwest, but in LA, you still ain't passed the test.
He says that he can tell a P when he sees one, and references Dre wearing lipstick in the Wrecking Crew, suggesting Dre to change his sex and occupation as a rapper.
See, I can tell a when I see one, Dre wearing lipstick, that mean you had to be one.
Just 11 days later, on October 30th, 1993, Snoop Dogg dropped his debut single, Who Am I? What's My Name? As a way to introduce himself to the world. This would serve as the lead single to his upcoming album, Doggystyle. The track would explode, peaking all the way to number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100, making Snoop the hottest rapper in the world as everyone awaited his debut album. On November 23rd, 1993, Snoop Dogg dropped his debut album, Doggystyle. The album was an instant classic, selling over 800,000 copies in the first week, reaching number 1 on the Billboard 200. Snoop Dogg made history, having the highest first week sales on a debut album from a hip-hop artist ever. This record would eventually be broken by 50 Cent in 2003 with Get Rich or Die Tryin'. Surprisingly enough, there were no actual disses by Snoop on Doggystyle, besides maybe the fictional radio host for the Dog Pound, Ricky Harris, hosting the fictional radio channel W Balls 187.4. His nickname is Easy and the Jackoff Hour, so that could be a jab at Eazy-E. The Dog Pound is the duo of Daz and Corrupt, two Crips, Daz from Long Beach and Corrupt is from South Central LA. Daz is affiliated with the Rollin' 20s, similar to Snoop, whilst Corrupt is affiliated with the Rollin' 60s neighborhood Crips. Being as Snoop didn't really diss Eazy on Doggystyle, after Eazy just dropped an all-time classic diss track, Real Mother Effin' G's, and an entire EP dissing them, this Ruthless vs. Death Row war was looking one-sided by the end of '93. Eazy-E and Ruthless were clearly winning the beef. That didn't stop Death Row from selling exponentially more records than Ruthless, but then again, the only reason why Death Row even got big was because of Suge stealing Eazy's artists. Eazy was getting paid from their success, so I'm pretty sure this was also seen as a win for Eazy. He was even promoting the Chronic on his Ruthless radio show because not only was he making money off it, but he genuinely liked the album. If you think Eazy lost the war because of how big Death Row was at the time, you're mistaken, because after Doggystyle, Death Row would be on a downward spiral. Eazy dissed Dre and Snoop so bad that they had no comeback ever since Dre Day. They haven't dropped a response. Meanwhile, Eazy is dissing them on live television and multiple diss songs. Eazy single-handedly destroyed Dre's street credibility in a time where your legitimacy was everything. Fans started seeing Dre as a phony, given that one of the most respected gangster rappers of all time just exposed you with evidence that you were never a gangster, you were a techno dancer who was only acting tough to sell records. Eazy-E was gearing up to drop his next project, which was called Straight Off the Streets of Mother Effin' Compton 1 and 2, as it was set to be a double album. Eazy announced the album on the inside cover of the It's On EP. On December 3rd, 1993, Eazy was doing an interview at Radioactive where he spoke on his beef with Dre and Death Row.
How did you hook up with Dre? Because I understand that you...
With Dre? I mean, I've been knowing him for a while, but you know, Dre was in that world-class wrecking crew.
Right.
Where they used to do their love
right.
songs.
That was a big hit here in Philly.
And everything and all that, you know.
Well, how did you hook up and how did you...
Well, I seen him at some club and he had on this sequence dress. And I was like, man, hey, you know, you got to get out of that stuff.
Right.
But he was a good producer.
So you saying you brought him in? You brought him into the hip hop thing, or you changed his appearance rather at the time?
Yeah, I tried to put him in something else.
Okay, in the black, in the.
No, he was rocking sweatsuits and flooding pants and tapered at the bottom. I tried to get him in khakis and everything, but you know, he finally jumped in them as time went on.
Okay, well, as a group NWA, so millions and millions of albums. Do you think you guys will ever get back together? I mean, business-wise, it'd be a great thing to do.
Yeah, business-wise it will be, but as long as Dre has Suge, you know, on his back, I don't think he'll do it.
In 1994, something crazy would happen. Dr. Dre and Ice Cube would reunite for the first time since Cube's departure from NWA in 1989. The two actually planned on dropping a joint album in '94 called Helter Skelter. At the time, Dre was working on his second album, The Chronic 2, A New World Order, Papa's Got a Brand New Funk, which was set to release in 1995 or 1996. The Helter Skelter album would end up being scrapped due to conflicts surrounding working schedules and label disputes, and also Dre's legal issues, which we will get into. One of the tracks from the album, Natural Born Killers, would appear on the soundtrack for the 1994 short film Murder Was the Case. In 1994, Death Row really started falling apart. Suge and Dre weren't seeing eye to eye anymore. On top of that, in August of 1994, Dr. Dre was sentenced to 5 months in jail after pleading no contest to his drunk driving charges from January of 1993. Dre was set to enter jail on January 10th, 1995, but under a furlough work arrangement, he would be allowed to go back to his home in Calabasas in his home studio to record and produce records. This caused the cancellation of the joint album with Ice Cube. This is also when Snoop and Dre really weren't that close anymore, as Snoop and the Dogg Pound would begin working away from Dre, letting Daz handle a lot of the production for the Dogg Pound's debut album, Dog Food, and Snoop's next album, The Dogfather. The rap world began turning on Dre. Fans and critics saying that he fell off because of how long it was taking him to drop his next album. Also, like I mentioned earlier, losing the beef to Eazy-E really hurt Dre's reputation, especially at a time where it was at an all-time low. The general consensus was that Dre fell off. He hasn't dropped since '92 with The Chronic. Dre's a perfectionist. He's known for taking a long time when making beats to perfect it. He was trying to make a record that was better than The Chronic and Doggystyle. Dre always tries to outdo the last piece of work, getting better with time. In 1994, Death Row only released 2 soundtracks for Above the Rim in March '94 and Murder Was the Case in October '94. That's all they did. Meanwhile, over at Ruthless, the newly signed group, Bone Thugs and Harmony, dropped their debut EP for Ruthless, Creepin' on a Come Up, in June 1994. The track Thuggish Ruggish Bone went platinum within a week after its release. Throughout the year, Eazy-E was still working on his double album, Straight Off the Streets of Mother Effin' Compton 1 and 2, which was set to release somewhere in 1995. With Dre behind bars, Snoop didn't visit him at all while in jail. Dre later said that this didn't bother him. There was no bad blood between them. The Dogg Pound dropped their record What Would You Do in 1994. Daz produced the track as Snoop and the Dogg Pound were working separately from Dre at this point. The track first appeared on the Murder Was the Case soundtrack in October '94. The Dogg Pound takes shots at Eazy-E, BG Knockout, and Dresta. Throughout the song, they make it clear that Ruthless doesn't want to mess with them. The disses come in verse 3, where Corrupt called Ruthless stupid mother effers, saying that they can't F with his crew.
You stupid mother can't f with my crew. I see.
Daz then saying that there's so many busters on the West Coast, which is a shot at Ruthless Records.
Get so many busters on the West Coast.
Daz asks Ruthless if they want to scrap, rap, or blast, meaning shoot it out, and he says that he'll be the first to hit him.
Do you want to rap, scrap, or blast? Cause the nigga Daz, I'll be the first one to hit him.
Daz then name drops BG Knockout, saying F him and everyone down with him, because BG Knockout, being from Compton, really hated Long Beach.
Oh yeah, fuck BG Knockout and every nigga down with him.
Corrupt says that there's a lot of people who are trying to mess with his crew, then saying, for instance, those Ruthless fools. He then says that if Ruthless was in a room with the Dogg Pound, they'll empty out the 38 clip on him.
These ruthless fools in a pound in one room, so let's conversate, slip at 38 then dip, empty out the clip.
In late 1994, while Eazy-E was doing his Ruthless radio show, the Dogg Pound would call in and they would get into an argument live on the air.
Who's on the phone?
Special Dad. Who was that on the phone? We got Corrupt, the DOC, Slim Capone, Enemy.
Okay, can I?
Say what you gotta say. Don't get on the phone tripping. Say what you gotta say without cussing. Now speak.
Hello, are you there?
Hello? Hey, what's up, cuz? Hey, this Corrupt and, you know, all that y'all be, you know what I'm saying, talking, we ain't even on all that level, man. This whole conversation is silly. There's too many problems on the streets to be all on the radio talking to gangsters and all that silly stuff. You know what I'm saying? Is on missions to make money. Well, Corrupt. But check about this. If this is Corrupt, number one is, who set it off? You set it off. All right, I set it off, and I talk about people who set off something talking about me, and ain't giving up the real. Because I'm giving up the real, because that's what I am. Hey, my homeboy DOC right here giving us the whole real. Well, I know this up to DOC. I talk to him all the time myself. You don't talk to Doc. The Doc don't know you. Come on, fool. You can't even Corrupt. I'm Daz. Anyway, Daz or whoever, you probably ain't even him. Because if Daz or Corrupt is real, they'll come down to the show and be on the show, on the Ruthless radio show. When you can sell 1 million records, you come talk to me. Who? You. Daz, you talking to the wrong fool. You talk to the wrong fool. Nigga, I just sold more records than you done ever. Okay, did you get paid for it? I bet you ain't seen $1 million. You ain't seen $1 million, so that's letting you know you don't even make 25 cents a record. You ain't selling, so they say you paid.
Well, how are you, Eazy? 30 years
Don't matter how old I am.
Just get straight with Tracy. That's what you need to do.
Now, you need to get on some other stuff, because we talking about what's real. You get your shit straight with Tracy first, then you can talk.
Please stop cursing on my show.
What I got straight with Tracy is straight. So now, don't even try to jump on that. Let's get back onto the subject of being real and not being real. Subject is being real. I never see you in Compton. You ain't been in Compton. The poor ass nigga movies. Hey, check this out. That's real. That's real.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
That's real. Now what's up, nigga?
Yo.
Hey, practice what you preach. He's a boss. Practice what you preach. And when you speak about Ruthless is me.
Eight was trying to get him. Yo,
when you diss me, you diss yourself. Hey, check this out. I can shut it all down. Now what's up? Who's 6-0?
Eight was trying.
I got love for the 6-0. I got love for the 6-0, but that don't have nothing to do with it. Your punk ass.
All right, Eight was trying to get a word in here. Eight, go ahead.
Hey, what's up, Daz?
What's up, Eight?
Hey, what's up, man? Havoc, man.
Who?
Havoc South Central Cartel. What's up?
All right, Eight, go ahead. Say what you were going to say. Hold up, let Eight say something, please.
Hey, I need y'all to turn up. I'm down right now. The drill is flowing. Hey, Trip, let me tell you how it is. Y'all jumped into something that didn't have nothing to do with y'all. Whatever is going on had something to do with me, Dre, and whoever else. It don't matter. Okay, if it don't matter, don't matter. It's on.
Okay. On October 31st, 1994, Halloween Day, Eazy-E was live on Ruthless Radio, where he would premiere a scathing, haunting diss track to the Dogg Pound and the rest of Death Row called What Would You Do?, which was a play on the Dogg Pound's hit song What Would You Do?, where they diss Eazy and Ruthless. This track was just a full-blown threat to Death Row. On the intro, Eazy starts off by calling Death Row the studio gangsters of the 90s, inside the minds of real G's.
Inside the minds of real G's. Death Row is looked upon as the studio gangsters of the 90s.
He then says that Death Row's 5 minutes of fame are up. Eazy then does a sadistic laugh as this scary, haunting beat plays while he threatens Death Row. He then starts off by calling out the Dogg Pound Crips, asking them if they want to scrap, which was a direct response to the Dogg Pound's lines on their track What Would You Do?
You wanna rap, scrap or blast?
So what up, Dogg Pound Crip? You wanna scrap?
Then saying, What will I do? Which is him answering the Dogg Pound's question, What would you do?
Now what would you do if you with me on my crew? Now what will I do? Let's see.
Then proceeds to tell them what he would do. He then name dropped Suge by name, saying that he would take out Suge and stomp down the row. This would be the one and only time Eazy-E actually dissed Suge Knight by name on a record. That's what makes this diss track crazy. There have only been a select few people who were brave enough to call out Suge by name, let alone threaten to take him out like Eazy did here. E then says that since Dre is a bitch, to pimp slap that.
Now I would take out Suge and stomp down the road. Since Dre is a pimp slap that hoe.
Then Eazy says that he's seeing doubles, which means he sees both Corrupt and Daz. He calls the Dogg Pound two dogs in a huddle.
Now I'm seeing doubles, oh man, two dogs in a huddle, oh goddamn.
Does a wordplay on Daz's line on his verse from The Day the N-Words Took Over off the Chronic, telling him not to run or I'll smoke him.
Now diggity diggity Daz, I biggity biggity blast, don't want smoke that ass.
Then telling Corrupt not to set trip by claiming Long Beach when he's a rolling 60s Crip from South Central.
Now Corrupt, don't even set trip, yelling Long Beach 6 blood and puppy pound Crip.
Then saying that Corrupt has his nuts on his chin while he's all in his Philly. Now here, Eazy-E is doing a wordplay on the blunt rapping brand Philly while referencing Corrupt's birthplace of Philadelphia.
Got my nuts on your chin while I'm all in your Philly hoe.
Telling him to test their luck and beat his ass. Now call him Corrupt. Eazy's really going at the Dogg Pound here for dissing him on What Would You Do and the radio call-in argument.
So come with it, fool, and test their luck and I beat the ass. Now call me Corrupt.
Eazy then goes at his next target, Snoop Dogg, references Snoop's line from Stranded on Death Row, Who Am I, and G's and Hustlers, where he says that he's creeping through the fog, referring to Snoop as Big Dog Blue, saying he has his 9mm killer hunting a dog named Snoop.
Hey yo, stepping through the fog and creeping through the smog. Then I step through the fog and I creep through the smog. I come creeping through the fog with my sagging deuce.
Now I'm creeping through the fog, yeah, Big Dog Blue. Got my 9mm killer hunting a dog named Snoop.
E then does his play on Murder Was the Case, saying he'll smoke death row, even your boo-boo and your baby, which is a direct play on Snoop's song, Murder Was the Case. I can't die, my boo-boo's about to have my baby.
I can't die, my boo-boo's about to have my baby.
I smoke all you fools, even your boo-boo and your baby.
On the hook, performed by Dirty Red, Eazy once again does a play on What Would You Do by the Dogg Pound.
But you can't, so don't even think about stepping in the hell.
So don't even think about stepping out the goddamn house.
On the second verse, Dirty Red takes more shots at Death Row, directly name dropping the label, says he know which one of them makes the best. Then references Snoop's track Doggy Dog World from Doggystyle, saying that he never runs with mutts, meaning Snoop is a mutt and he can't kick it with them. On the outro, Eazy-E sends a message to Death Row, calling Dr. Dre a buster, and the only law that he broke is beating Ricky Harris's wife.
Dr. Dre, straight buster, never broke a law in his life.
Says that Snoop Dogg went from a high top fade to sporting braids, but he's getting played, not paid on Death Row.
Snoop Dogg, from a high top fade to sporting braids and getting played, not paid.
Now Eazy would take another shot at Suge Knight when he said that Snoop is getting treated like a over at Death Row, and that we all know who's doing the pimping, which of course is a shot at Suge Knight, saying that he's pimping out Snoop and all the other artists on Death Row.
Treated like a and we all know who's doing the pimping.
He tells Daz to be a leader, not a follower.
Daz, don't be a follower, be a leader. Stay off the next man's nuts.
And tells Corrupt to stick to hanging with rolling 60s instead of the rolling 20s.
Corrupt, the kingpin, stick with the 6-0s.
Then ending the track with a sadistic laugh.
Death Row, really though.
This track was officially released in 1996 posthumously on the album Straight Off the Streets of Mother Effin' Compton. The beat on the track changed, but lyrics remained the same, but the one big difference was the ending. After the outro on the official release version, there's a terrifying skit of Eazy-E pulling up to what seems to be a death row party and shooting it up. This is one of the most underrated diss tracks of all time that rarely gets talked about. The way Eazy-E completely threatened death row in a scary way was brilliant. Every throw death row had for Ruthless and Eazy, they would come back with a devastating track. Dre and Snoop drop Dre Day, then Eazy drops Real Mother Effin' G's and puts their lights out. The Dogg Pound drop What Would You Do, then Eazy drops his own song called What Would You Do, and the Dogg Pound had no response. Eazy-E was dominating this beef on all accounts. Now these weren't the only tracks where Eazy-E did Snoop, Dre, and Death Row. Throughout 1993 and 1994, Eazy-E recorded several songs taking shots at Dre, Snoop, and the rest of Death Row, all which would be released posthumously.
1, 2, 3 into the 4. Snoop, Doggy Dogg, and Dr. Dre is at the door.
1, 2, 3 into the 4. Easy can eat with the chrome to your dome. Now what the is worse than one punk? 2 punk. Add them up and get the picture. One's a from the days and one's a buster. I got some out of bounds from the pound off of MLK. A 30-06 with the scope. I make a skinhead brain bust all across the West Coast.
But sadly, tragedy was looming in the year of 1995. As 1994 came to a close, an NWA reunion was actually on the table for the former members, but this would be on hold because in early 1995, tragedy struck. On February 24th, 1995, Eazy-E was at the studio when he would step out to the hallway, violently coughing and wheezing, so he was taken to the hospital. On March 16th, 1995, it was publicly announced to the world that Eazy-E was diagnosed with AIDS, and Eazy would make a public statement. Now I'm in the biggest fight of my life, and it ain't easy. But I want to say, much love to those who have been down with me, and thanks for all your support. Just remember, it's your real time and your real life. 10 days after it went public, on March 26th, 1995, Eazy-E tragically passed away from AIDS-induced pneumonia at just 30 years old. On April 7th, he was buried at Rose Hills Memorial Park. After this, the war between Ruthless and Death Row continued. BG Knocc and Dresta would ultimately leave Ruthless Records to sign with Outburst and Def Jam. On August 15th, 1995, BG Knocc and Dresta dropped their album Real Brothers, and on this album they made an entire diss track aimed at Death Row called DPGK, which stood for Dogg Pound Killers. This diss track was a response for the Dogg Pound's disses on What Would You Do. The track starts off with BG Knocc saying that they're going to serve these marks from the Dogg Pound Killer. Dresta opens up with the first verse saying that he's going to butt Corrupt, Nate Dogg, and Daz. Then saying to tell the whole Dogg Pound he said F them.
Tell Corrupt, Nate and Daz, I'ma buck 'em. Matter of fact, tells that whole pound I say.
Then says F and he busts her down with the Mutt Pound, which is a response to the Dogg Pound's lines from What Would You Do.
Oh yeah, BG Knocc out and every so he bust her down with the Mutt.
BG Knocc says that he's known as the Dog Catcher, which is self-explanatory, then does a play on Soup's iconic line from Dre Day and other songs. Then says that he's a dog killer and then warns them not to run up on him if they ain't prepared to fight.
I'm a dog killer cause all dogs have they day. Now don't run up on me if you ain't prepared to fight.
On the hook, Dresta name drops Daz, Corrupt, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Nate Dogg, and the Dogg Pound saying killer after each name, which is a sign of disrespect, adding a K after someone's name or gang, carrying around that you are against them.
Snoop Dogg, Nate Dogg.
On verse 3, Dresta says that dudes are out here fake like Nate Dogg. Then saying talking that to Dre will get you and your DJ regulated, which is a reference to Warren G and Nate Dogg's song Regulate, which Warren G is the DJ.
Out here fake dog like Nate Dogg, but swear you made it, but talking that to Dre you get you and your DJ regulated.
Then saying a fake is what he hates, so F Corrupt, Daz, and Nate Dogg.
A fake is what I hate, so Corrupt, Daz, and Nate.
On verse 4, BG Knocc references the track What Would You Do, saying if he was the Dogg Pound, he would take a chill pill. He says that he gave them a pass, but now that they talked, when he sees Daz, he's gonna bank him, which is a term for fighting. On verse 5, BG Knocc says he does some real gangsta shit and is checking those suckers, which is Death Row he's referring to. He then does a play on Snoop's traditional Snoop D-O double G, but replaces double G with Bang and Busters.
I check those suckers, they call themselves causing ruckus. 94 set claiming studio banging buster.
Verse 6, Dresta pays homage to Eazy and says the DPG, Dog Pound Gang, doesn't want to see them. Then saying CC, which stands for Compton Crip, then saying that they're nothing but marks.
Much love to the Eazy-E, CBT, and DPG. Don't want to see you fools ain't nothing.
He then says that Daz will find his ugly self in a smashed trash bag.
Daz, you go around and find your ugly smashed in a trash bag, fool.
And says that you wannabes are going to be laying if they keep effing with Compton. Then closes the verse by reiterating that they're Dog Pound killers.
You wannabes gonna be laying down if you keep around with the Compton Dog Pound killer.
The music video was eventually released, and they dissed the Dog Pound and Death Row throughout the video. Actors play Snoop, Nate Dogg, and the rest of the Dog Pound, where they would tie them up and throw them in a trunk. During the month of August in 1995, Montel Jordan was filming his music video for his track Something for the Honeys, and the music video was set on a golf course. A lot of people showed up, including Snoop, the Dog Pound, BG Knockout, and Dresta. Somewhere along the lines, a confrontation broke out between Nate Dogg, Dresta, and BG Knockout. This whole incident was caught on film. Nate Dogg and Dresta started going at it when all of a sudden Nate Dogg hit Dresta in the head with a golf club. BG Knockout then ran over to Nate Dogg with a golf club, going after Nate Dogg, who ran until the security intervened, drawing their weapons on BG Knockout and his entourage. After this, the Death Row and Ruthless beef would completely die out, as Death Row suffered from internal issues. With the signing of Pac in late 95 and the departure of Dre in early 96, Suge's empire came crashing down on him. That's the whole story, Death Row versus Ruthless. So who do I think won? I'll go with Eazy-E and Ruthless Records. As I stated earlier, Eazy won against Dre on the music side, and he also predicted the demise of Death Row. His comments aged like fine wine. He knew Death Row was bound to fall apart with a guy like Suge in charge, treating it like the streets. Eazy-E is so underrated when it comes to beef. He managed to win against Dre, Snoop, and other Death Row artists at their peak. We're talking about one of the greatest labels in hip-hop, which Eazy-E managed to defeat. Each side had not only some of the best diss tracks in rap history, but some of the greatest rap songs ever, with Dre Day and Real Mother Effin' G's, both timeless classics that will live on forever. On January 30th, 1996, Eazy-E's posthumous album Straight Up the Streets of Mother Effin' Compton was released. On the track Old School Shit, he sent shots at Dr. Dre once again. On the interlude, after Dresta's verse, he says out with the old, in with the new, which means out with Dre, the old, and in with Dresta, the new artist. BG Knockout dissed Death Row on his verse, saying the Death Row posse, they can't handle him. Name drops Snoop and calls Dre by his government first name, Andre, telling them to come and try to fade him.
Snoopy Andrea, come and try to fade her. Loped out Compton, original baby gangster.
He mocks Dre's album, The Chronic, saying it's more like stress. Then disses the Dog Pound, saying that they don't want to step to the atomic dog.
You say it's chronic, but to me it's more like stress. The Dog Pound don't want to step to the atomic dog.
Eazy closes the track going at Dre, saying how Dre was jealous that he was the man with the upper hand in Ruthless.
Jealousy is a when you're the man with the upper hand.
Then says that Dre wants to be a G like him, but he's the guy who made a G out of the DRE.
Wanna be like me, be a G like me, but I'm the nigga that made a G out of the DRE.
Meaning he's the one who discovered Dre while he was in the Wrecking Crew and turned him into a gangster rapper, saying he was the captain and Dre was his sidekick.
See, I was the captain, Dre was my sidekick.
Then saying Dre's claiming he's a G, so how does it feel to be an imitation of him?
Not claiming you a G, how does it feel to be me?
Dre would go on to have a huge comeback in 1999 when he dropped his second album 2001. On the track What's the Difference, Dre admits to missing Eazy, saying he's still with him, saying F the beef.
Eazy, I'm still with you. The beef, I miss you, and that's just being real with you.
So that's all for this video, but before we end, I want to dedicate this video to Eric Lynn Wright, aka Eazy-E. The music world owes this man a lot. Your impact will never be forgotten. You're the true definition of an icon. You might not be here, but your legacy will be here forever. Rest in peace, the godfather of gangsta rap, Eazy-E.